Your next speaker has what I think of as the classic Silicon Valley story. Erin McKean was giving a TED Talk, and she was funny and charming and inspiring. And after the talk, up ran an investor, quite a famous investor, Roger McNamee, who we know quite well. And he said, "Erin, your TED Talk should be a company, and I'm going to fund you." And he invested in her, and her idea became a company, Reverb.com. And it grew, and I believe Reverb just got bought, right? It just got purchased. But in the midst of this wonderful Silicon Valley story, it turns out that her dream, that original kernel of an idea to create the world's biggest online dictionary, somehow got lost. So Erin, being the smart woman that she is, she wrested back control of her idea, wordnik.com, and she turned it from a for-profit Silicon Valley funded company into a non-profit, where today I want to urge you all for $50 to adopt a word for the year and help her realize her dream. She, being a smart Silicon Valley woman, has other funding mechanisms in her mind. But when we asked her what she wants, what Erin McKean wants, she said, "I want all the words." Please welcome author, editor-in-chief, word freak, Erin McKean.
I didn't even have to drop out of college. So I want to talk to you today about 4 S's. I want to talk to you about source and size and so what and support. And so the source, where do words come from? Well, words really come from journalism. That's the first practical place where we can see a word come into the world, come into the community of English speakers. Journalists are the midwives that bring a word from its mother and father out into the world. And so here are some examples of journalists telling you what words are. We see this a lot with proper nouns like Juneteenth, the oldest nationally celebrated commemoration of the ending of slavery in the United States. You know, very recently was celebrated. Words from other languages that we want to use in English, like affro, the frightful ones, white mercenaries. Memex. This is actually the sentence that Vannevar Bush used to explain his invention of the Memex, which was notional at the time and which we get closer and closer to every day. And then scientific words, the anthrome, the anthropogenic biome. So this is where words come from, and this is how WordNik collects words so that we can show them to other people so that they can understand them. Because probably most of the words you've learned in your lifetime you didn't read a dictionary definition for. You saw it out in the wild, and then it became part of you, part of your language, part of your understanding. And so the second S is the size. What's the scope of the problem? Your dictionaries that you use every day, they probably do pretty well for you, but there are so many more words that aren't in any dictionary. There was a paper in the journal Science in 2010 which estimated conservatively that 52% of the unique words of English are not in any dictionary, including the OED, including the Merriam-Webster Third International, the biggest dictionaries of English that we have. And they found this number doing what Brewster described as big data work. They looked at the Google Books corpus. They looked at about 4% of all the books in English ever published. They looked at billions and billions and billions of words, and that's the number they came up with. And they concentrated in part on words that are more frequent than 1 in a billion. And you might think, oh, wow, 1 in a billion, that's pretty rare. What's a 1 in a billion word look like? What's a word that occurs once every billion words of English? Well, the word the, in a billion words of English, you're going to see 56 million thes. You're going to be pretty bored of the word the after a billion words. You're going to see the word cantaloupe about 45 times. You're going to see the word zipper about 7 times. So even 1 in a billion words are not very rare. And words that are rarer than 1 in a billion, well, the word bumblebee is rarer than 1 in a billion. And that's not a very rare word, or a word that we would expect to be, you know, rarefied and only available in the biggest dictionaries. And that totally leaves out words that are interesting scientific technical words like proteome or interesting literary words like mythopoesis. Those words are often ignored. So what? What does it mean that we're missing all these words? Well, it's not just that we're missing chunks of the historical record of English. Did anybody see the article on Gizmodo the other word about the word, I think it was parbuckles? Somebody got a billboard in Brooklyn and put this really rare word up that they'd found in a digitized book that was available nowhere else on the internet. And then just started, she actually put a light in her apartment that flashed every time somebody searched for the word and found her website. So there are lots and lots of words that just don't exist, that are missing. But it's not so much that they're historical curiosities. The fact that there's not a place to see how journalists are using these words, how people are reacting to these words, that we only see the dry definitions, means that it's harder for us to have a shared vocabulary. It's harder for us to have a shared language. It's harder for us to have a truly shared culture if we don't agree on the words. And you can see this in last week, Merriam-Webster, the great lexicographers at Merriam-Webster, Peter Sokolowski in particular, they tweet, what are the most looked up words on Merriam-Webster this week? Sadly, one of the most looked up words last week was terrorism, because people were arguing about whether what happened in Charleston was terrorism or not. So they wanted to go see, what's our shared cultural understanding of what terrorism is? And they got a dry dictionary definition. They didn't get examples, or not very many of them, of people using terrorism in lots of different contexts so that they could see, so that they could avoid what sometimes we call the Princess Bride problem, which is you say, oh, you keep using that word, I don't think it means what you think it means. And support. So right now, as Renee so generously said, you can adopt a word on WordNick and you'll get your name on it, a link to your Twitter account. More than 300 words have been adopted so far, including just about every variation of the word robot. We are in Silicon Valley after all. Also, but and buts, plural, both already been adopted, so I'm very sorry about that. We also want to make words available to as many people as possible in as many places as possible, so we have an API. More than 14,000 developers have keys to our API. They make all sorts of cool things, lots of word games. Intel is our biggest paid commercial user of the API for educational tools. The privacy-focused search engine, DuckDuckGo, they take their word lookup results from the WordNick API. The reason that I have been focusing on letter S words is another source of our support is that the entire letter S has been generously sponsored starting July 1st. So in addition to adopting a word, you can sponsor a whole letter of the alphabet. And in fact, if we had every letter of the alphabet sponsored, we would cover our entire budget for next year. Funny how that math worked out. So those are the S's that I would like to leave you with, and thank you very much.
Question for Erin McKean and WordNick. What's your favorite word, Erin?
I get asked this a lot. So there are so many words, it's hard to pick a favorite. The word that I adopted on WordNick, so you get a sticker, is the word erinaceous, because my name is Erin. And erinaceous means of, like, or resembling a hedgehog. So it's a very cute word.
Well, let me just say we adopted impactful too. So
yes.
It doesn't have to be a very nice word or a good word, but all the words need to be adopted.
And adopting words puts them at the front of the line to get new data. So several people have made up words that they have adopted so that we will go and try and find if anyone else is using them.
Maybe you addressed this, but at what point does an old word change so much that it's a new word in the sense of how it's being used or understood, or maybe that's...
Well, there's a theory in linguistics that words don't actually have any meaning outside of their contexts. So a word by itself is just a string of letters, and it has to be inside an organism of the sentence or the paragraph or the book to actually take on its full meaning. So you could say that every new sentence is a chance for a new meaning for every word. But in general, it tends to be a little more clear-cut. But people resurrect and reinvigorate old words all the time.
So who writes all of your definitions?
You see, those slides that I showed you, they stand in place of the definitions. The definitions are the boiled down, kind of freeze-dried powder that all of those sentences turn into in a traditional dictionary because of space reasons. When a dictionary editor tries to write a definition, what they look at is dozens, hundreds, thousands of those types of sentences to figure out what is the most boring way we could describe this word. So those definitions, we actually call them free-range definitions, and we've set up an algorithm, basically, that goes through text and tries to find the most explanatory sentences that we can to show on WordNick. And we now have enough labeled data that we should be able to change it into a more machine learning, deep learned process very soon. Most people learn better by example.
Erin, does WordNick include like double words like this plus this, like dark plus money? Because if it does, we'd like to sponsor it. So.
Yes, you can definitely sponsor phrases. English has that invisible extra letter of the alphabet, the space, where lots of things where we consider, oh, they're two words, well, they tend to behave like a single word. And we try and show as much data for those phrases as we can. Thank you all so much.